kind of calm silence. Everyone was watching very, very respectfully. Actually, I'm going to bring in Mira. Hi. Mira, you were just watching, obviously, as that coffin. Can you just catch your breath and kind of first reaction as you just saw that go by?
I just cannot believe we're here. What an honor to just be in this place and see it. My husband and I were doing a photography workshop, and our whole group from around the U.S. just got here yesterday. And for us to be able to witness this is incredible.
Can you describe what the atmosphere is like in this crowd right now? The only words I could think of is kind of a hushed calm and kind of a real camaraderie.
It feels like a sense of wonder too, right? That
we're witnessing this.
Yeah, that we're on the world stage, and the sense of awe of someone who had such impact.
Can I bring in your friends a little bit?
Yeah.
What was your name again?
Lisa.
Lisa, can you tell me just what that moment was like? Because it's incredibly profound.
It is. He was such a loving and kind Pope, so I feel like everyone just is so respectful and loving to each other the last couple days and today in this moment, and I love that.
And that's what he would have wanted. He wanted a diverse group. We've been talking about what an unbelievably diverse group of people that he drew here today. I mean, I'm sure you guys have noticed, you hear every different language along this bridge. You've seen people from every kind of life. Can you tell me what you felt just now?
Yeah,
this is Mira's husband.
There's a sense of gravity to the whole situation, right? I mean, everyone's here to pay respects, and just seeing this many people get together and like I said, it's somber experience, but everyone is very cordial to each other, and everyone reaches out and talks to each other, and so it's just bringing everybody together and
bringing everyone together, which is exactly what he would have wanted.
Yes, to hear the music and the singing. I mean, our hotel is like 4 or 5 blocks away, but it's like we were following the singing, and it was washing over us as we were walking. It was, the whole morning has just felt so sacred.
I really appreciate it, you guys. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Now, Craig, what's happening? We're getting in a little bit of a crowd crush. People are now moving on, so I think there's a sense that we may see the crowds get bigger and bigger along this procession route. We were at the very beginning, as you know, it's 3.7 miles. I think a lot of people are now trying to keep up with that procession, with the coffin, to carry it. I'm just looking, there are huge crowds just ahead of us to kind of accompany him to his final resting place, Craig.
So many people there lining the streets to get a front row seat to history and to say goodbye to the 88-year-old pontiff there. I do want to go back really quickly here to Ann Thompson and Tom Yamas, their vantage point there at St. Peter's Basilica. And you and I were having a conversation earlier this week about this Pope's final resting place and the symbolism there. Why do we suppose that Pope Francis decided he would not be buried there? He would not be entombed behind you at St. Peter's?
I think for a couple of reasons. First of all, he saw himself not as a pope, but as a pastor. And he wanted to be close to the people, to be part of the people. He always said that if he retired, he would just become the Bishop of Rome, and he'd hear confessions and he'd give out communion. He wouldn't be anybody special. He wouldn't wear white. And I think you see that now in depth. He didn't want to be buried in there. St. Maria Maggiore has special significance for the Pope. As we've mentioned many times, it's where he would go to pray before and after each trip. But beyond that, it is also where St. Ignatius Loyola said his first Mass. And he is the founder of the Jesuits. And when Pope Francis was Jorge Bergoglio, he was a Jesuit. And so it's those two things, the devotion to the Mother of God and the first place that the founder of the Jesuits said Mass, that drew him to that basilica.
As we continue to watch Pope Francis make his way to his final resting place, I mean, even his coffin, simpler than just about every other pope who's been laid to rest. We're told that it's the outer wooden coffin. It's a simple wood, the simplest of woods that they could find, a cypress wood lined with zinc. Cypress, a common wood that symbolizes all popes share in the common humanity of all. He insisted that he be buried like he lived. Simply. Professor, I want to spend some time here just for a moment talking about this Pope's legacy and what it will be. Much has been made of the way he tried to increase the role of women in the church, to raise the profile of women in the church. What say you to that?
He absolutely did that. There are more women serving in leadership positions now than there were, many more than before his pontificate started. He, in his revision of the Roman Curia, the Vatican bureaucracy, he made it possible for any baptized person to be a leader, separating leadership, not necessarily tying leadership to the sacrament of ordination. Craig, it's obviously still a very male church. We just see all those men, all those cardinals. We know that one of them is going to be Pope. It's going to be a man. So he didn't change much, but he spoke about why women's role is important. And I think more people are speaking about that now than before, and that's thanks to him.
Father, Tom Yamas made the point earlier this week. Tom, are you still with me? Do I still have you there?
Yeah, correct. Still here with you, buddy.
You made the point earlier this week that you were struck by the number of young people who had made their way to St. Peter's at some point to pay their respects.
Yeah, we were actually out at dinner yesterday, and we were surrounded by young people, teenagers, college-age kids who had come to Rome, come to Vatican City to celebrate youth celebrations for the Catholic Church. As we mentioned, this is a Jubilee year where the Vatican asked Catholics from around the world to make a pilgrimage to come here and to pray. It just happened that also it coincided with the Pope's funeral. But the young people that we talked to, again, kids from studying abroad, kids from colleges all over America, even some that weren't Catholic. Pope Francis was such a big public figure. He's a historic figure. He will be. That they wanted to come here and mark this moment. And as we watch this procession, Craig, I'm struck that it doesn't look like there is a square inch of sidewalk that is not covered with people. I mean, you now have rows of people in this section of Rome here, 2 to 3 rows back of people that are waiting to see the Pope, to say goodbye. They're waving. They, of course, are with cell phones in hands. It was interesting during the Mass, which usually you don't see. We saw what appeared to be priests, maybe bishops, with cell phones as well, taking photos, because this is obviously going to happen once. As we're passing here, I believe this is the Supreme Court of Rome, if I'm correct, but I'm sure if I'm wrong,
it's the memorial to Vittorio Emanuele II.
Right. And something else, Craig, something else that we've learned here, when we were looking at the Pope's pickup truck, it's funny, Ann and I were talking, and we said it resembles a Dodge Ram, but then our crack assignment desk went into it and looked into it. It's actually a Mercedes-Benz, and I told Ann, I said, I didn't know Mercedes-Benz made a pickup truck. And Ann, what did you say?
I said for him, and it turns out it's all electric, so that's in keeping with Laudato Si, his encyclical on the environment. And it's also actually not a pickup truck, it's the Pope Mobile.
Oh, and it is just cut out the back.
Took out the back, so he is going to his final resting place in the vehicle that he last rode in. Think 6 days ago, he was riding through St. Peter's Square. He came to the balcony to wish everybody happy Easter, and then within 24 hours, he was gone.
And we talked about this. You and I remember we had a crosstalk on my show where we talked about he would always push himself. Mm-hmm. He wanted to constantly push himself, even though he was very ill, and he was quite literally, now we know, fighting for his life, but he wanted to be out there in front of the people. He wanted to travel the world, and you wondered if that played any kind of role sort of in his last moments, because it is incredible that he was able to celebrate Mass, get in that Pope Mobile, as you say, and then really hours later he left us.
I was walking across St. Peter's Square this week with a friend of his, and I said, we were talking about Easter Sunday, and he said if Pope Francis had had his way, he would have died in the square. This is where he loved to be among the people. And as he said, he died with his boots on. He died doing what he loved. That's what truly made him happy. It's what always drove him.
It's interesting because when you read about Pope Francis, he says in his book that the before he got elected, before that conclave, he had booked a round-trip ticket. He wanted to come back fast because he didn't want to be in the Vatican. It's not that he didn't like this place, but it wasn't who he was, and he never took that return ticket home. He became Pope.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that's misunderstood about Francis that he has tried to explain over the years is that while he was a humble man, it wasn't something that came naturally to him. It really was a practice, and part of that, he turned in his first-class ticket when he was coming over, when he was elected, exchanged it for a coach ticket. He had speeches on his desk back in Buenos Aires that he had to work on, and that's the kind of person he was. He never thought about lifting himself up. He thought about lifting up others.
And Tom, stand by for me just a moment there. And by the way, thank you so much for clearing up the confusion over the transportation to his final resting place as well there. Father Bartunek is with me here in the studio, and we can also, as we wait for the Pope to make his way to his final resting place, we can tell you that we've been told that the tomb, as you might imagine, going to be quite simple, just his name on it. But the marble that will be used inside that tomb, that marble is coming from his home country of Argentina. There is a picture that was released earlier this week of the tomb itself. But Father, I want to come back to you and talk about something that was brought up earlier. So much has been made of this particular Pope's appeal. For folks who may be unfamiliar with your backstory, it is quite interesting. You're a priest now, but before you were a priest, you were a high school history teacher, a drama director, a baseball coach. You spent a year as an actor in Chicago. You decided to forego Hollywood for the priesthood, but you discovered your faith later in life than most, your Catholic faith. What did this Pope mean to those who were not Catholic, those who perhaps have struggled with faith in their lives?
Yeah, well, I think everything that we've been talking about and seeing came across in everything the Pope did. The Pope was so close to people, and his whole approach to evangelization, and I agree with Cardinal Ray, he said that the guiding principle of his papacy was really evangelization, mission, bringing the good news to people. And his approach to evangelization was make the good news, start with the good news, start with the encounter with a real person, and then bring the doctrine in later.
Father, this is just an amazing vantage point of the Pope passing the Coliseum there.
Yeah, you think about the Coliseum as a place where actually early Christians were martyred in the early years of the church. The ruins of the Coliseum there, and the papacy continuing through the centuries. Pope Francis, who carried the torch for his 12 years. And Cardinal Ray's homily actually ended with the phrase, the torch of hope, that he implored the Pope from heaven to pray for humanity, that we can continue to raise the torch of hope. So I think when you see kind of even history just telescoped in this camera shot, I think we're kind of feeling the hope that Pope Francis always communicated.
It really is just quite remarkable on so many levels. And you're also reminded of just how much history lives in Italy, Rome is especially. And again, for folks who might just be joining us, this is Pope Francis being carried to his final resting place. We saw the roughly 2-hour funeral at St. Peter's, and then he was loaded into the back of his Pope Mobile and is taking this procession just under 4 miles outside the city. And again, it bears repeating, this is a Pope who insisted on not being buried inside St. Peter's Basilica. And Professor, we talked earlier about not just the significance of that, but how this is actually going to make it more accessible to folks who want to go and pay their respects. How so?
That's right. It's more open than St. Peter's. It's in a poor neighborhood of Rome. It's very close to Termini, the main train station in Rome. So fitting for a pope who talked so much about people on the move and migrants. So it will become a place, it's already a place of pilgrimage, but it will become even more so.
Tom, and I know you're continuing to watch these images play out as well. And Ann Thompson, again, I think it also bears repeating, this is a scene that you've seen a number of times. You have covered the Catholic Church, you've covered the Pope for a number of years here at NBC. A penny for your thoughts.
I'm just struck by how even in death he keeps breaking molds. I mean, I have seen a lot of Pope-mobile rides around the world, but I've never seen anything quite like this. And you hear that sustained applause from the people who've gathered there. And yet, for as amazing this is, I think what we will find that will be most moving is when he gets to Santa Maria Maggiore, and there are going to be people who are poor, transgender, homeless, migrants who are going to hold white roses and line the steps and accompany the casket on its last journey. And I think it's so perfect because Pope Francis used his power to accompany them in the 12 years of his papacy. Now, at the end of his life, they're accompanying him.
And something notable, the icon that Pope Francis would pray to at that basilica was brought here to St. Peter's, and it was right up there in the altar, and it's the place where he would pray before and after every papal trip. And Mary was such a big part of his life and his ministry, and he would talk not only about that icon, but also Mary, the Mary of Knots, the mother where she's untying the knots in Germany, was so important to him. As we talk about his role with women, and it's interesting, Anne, because as much as he did things publicly for women or for the LGBTQ community, when you talk to other Vatican watchers, and you hear it from cardinals that are considered conservative within the Catholic Church, they say a lot of the dogma never changed. He did lots of things publicly, but the Catholic Church, the dogma, never changed.
So that's very true. He said he was not in support of women's ordination. He said that John Paul II had closed the book on that. He was considering for the second time the issue of whether women could be made deacons. But as Kathy said, what he really did was within the Curia separate the path for advancement from a Roman collar. And so you have one woman who is head of a dicastery, which is a department here in the Vatican. You have another woman, a nun who is running the Vatican City, essentially the mayor of Vatican City. And then you have Sister Natalie Beckhart, who was the first woman to have a vote in the Synod of Bishops. So he pried open that door, and that was difficult in and of itself. But you've got to remember, this is a 2,000-year-old institution that doesn't move on a dime.
Everything takes a long time here, and that's the big question. Where does it go from here? But as we're talking, the applause sounds seems to be getting louder and louder as he makes his way through Rome, headed towards that basilica in his final resting spot. And then, Anne, we know that there will be ceremonies there today and tonight, going into tomorrow, correct?
Right. The actual burial itself we will not be able to see. That will be closed. Tonight there will be a rosary at the basilica. I don't know if that's going to be televised. And then tomorrow afternoon the cardinals are going to go and pray a rosary at Francis' tomb.
And you had pointed out that a lot of these cardinals have been hosting events in the lead up to this funeral, praying rosaries at that basilica. And it's sort of, here we go. This is actually one of our first looks here that we can see of the basilica. I was out there earlier in the week, and so many people were gathered there. We spoke with the cardinal who's in charge of that basilica. He's the Cardinal of Lithuania, and I asked him, I said, when you vote in the conclave, are you going to vote for a pope that will take the church in a more progressive manner? Are you going to vote for a pope that will take the church in a more conservative manner? He said, I want to vote for a pope that's going to take the church in the way of the gospel. And you hear that from a lot of the cardinals. You could say it's sort of the political answer, but it's where a lot of these cardinals believe the church should go. As we were seeing our first sort of live images as that Pope-mobile is making its way in reverse to leave the coffin here, carrying Pope Francis as it's going to enter Santa Maria Maggiore. And as you mentioned, we're not going to see the entombment, but we have seen pictures of the tomb so far. It is very simple. It simply says Franciscus. It's the way he wanted it. There are other popes that are buried here, but we have not seen this, and we should remind our viewers, Anne, we have not seen this, the world has not seen this, anything like this in more than 100 years.
Yeah, no, this is completely unique in modern times and very much Francis. You know, I got a text from a Catholic leader in the U.S. as we were on the air that said it's the end of one era and the beginning of another, and you really feel that today as you watch this. And as you mentioned, because those men who were there, the cardinals who were there, one of them, there's that icon.
Yeah, there it is right there.
We've been talking about.
Which they carried through the streets, right? They thought it could help cure the plague centuries ago. It is, for Catholics, the ultimate icon to Mary.
So here are the people representing the poor, the marginalized, the homeless, the migrants, holding those white roses to welcome the body of Pope Francis.
I spoke to a Syrian refugee who Pope Francis helped get out of a refugee camp, and she says she doesn't know if her family would be alive without Pope Francis and with the group that helped them. Craig, we're going to send it back to you in the studio from here in the Vatican.
Tom Yamas and Thompson, thank you both so much for your work this morning. And again, we have been watching the funeral of Pope Francis. As you saw there, his simple wooden casket has now arrived at St. Mary Major, where he will be entombed, the first pope in more than 100 years to be buried outside St. Peter's, as we watch the parade of clergy, the bishops, the cardinals, all of them making their way into St. Mary Major as well. We're told this is going to be a private ceremony as well. We can also tell you that the Pope's tomb, very much like the Pope himself, very simple, made from marble that was brought in from his birth country, Argentina. The only word on his tomb will be his name. And with that, we are going to leave you for just a few moments here. We'll take a break. We will have much more just ahead on Saturday Today with Peter Alexander and Laura Jarrett. But for now, I'm Craig Melvin here in New York. Have a good day.
People that watch the Today Show aren't just watching a show. They're people that are in the family. They're in our family.
They're allowing us into their homes every morning.
When we go out there and we get to meet people and they say, I love you, you feel like family, I always say, we feel like your family too. That's how we feel.
And they're so excited to be there. We get excited. We feed off that energy.
They're the reason we get up in the morning. It's the excitement of being part of something that's bigger than you.
The NBC News mobile app. Get connected to your favorite news shows. For the top stories, breaking news, and live video, download the NBC News mobile app now.
Breaking news tonight. This is a massive storm affecting almost all of Florida.
Prepare for the worst, obviously, and hope for the best.
This soldier is scanning the sky for Russian drones.
With all these cuts, are you worried you're going to lose your farm?
There's no more smoke, no more fire, but there's still a danger.
With these serious incidents we've had, is it the possibility of human error?
Here on Bourbon Street, the healing has begun.
As we know through the great Louis Armstrong, music is a healer.
Every angle, every night.
Stay right here.
NBC Nightly News.
Get ready for an all-new week of Jenna and Friends with my guest co-hosts Justin Sylvester, Tina Fey, Wanda Sykes, and Ken Jeong, plus Oscar winners Dina Davis and Davine Joy Randolph. That's all next week on Jenna and Friends.
As the days get longer, you can feel it, like a breath of fresh air.
And no matter what the day holds, we come here for all of it, because this is where it's all happening.
We get the best start to the day because we started together.
More Americans turn to NBC News than any other news organization.
Good morning. Thanks for starting your weekend off with us. A somber morning as the world says goodbye to Pope Francis.
Hundreds of thousands in Rome and millions around the world watching as the pontiff is laid to rest.